Why don't people pedal bikes with 200 mils of travel? I mean, they're riding enduro bikes in the bike park, basically riding rough downhill tracks anyways, and travel doesn't weigh anything. Historically, bikes with this much travel, well, they're a lot more work to handle at slower speeds, you know, mushing through all that travel. And then ground clearance is also an issue. These bikes, 200 mils of travel, they're designed to race downhill, not to pedal through janky stuff where you typically take an enduro bike. What if we took a lightweight downhill bike that pedals reasonably well and transformed it into a super-enduro bike? That's what we're about to do with this 2025 Pivot Phoenix in a Pinkbike Experiment. Why did we choose this bike in particular? Well, you, the readers, asked for this, but there are a couple other considerations. This frame is fairly lightweight, the C-tube angle is fairly steep for a downhill bike, and the anti-squat is also on the higher side, so it's gonna pedal reasonably well. What are some of the obvious downsides gonna be? Well, this bike is extremely slack. 62.5 degree head tube angle. This is not gonna steer very well while climbing uphill. It's gonna wander, it's gonna tip. It's gonna be a little tough to manage. Secondly, the BB is pretty low, but hopefully with some enduro-ish parts, we can bodge those on here and make this a capable uphill and downhill worthy machine. First, we need to increase the gear ratios so that we can be able to pedal up these steep hills. That means putting on a much wider range cassette and a different derailleur that has a longer cage. Wide range cassette. You know what? It's actually not too bad. I think this might work. Now that I got the wide range cassette on here, the next thing we're gonna need is a dropper post in order to sit down and pedal this thing uphill. So that's a pretty easy one. Let's get that on. So that'll tell you how steep the seat angle is on this bike, because this post was just on another trail bike, which had a slacker seat angle. So this thing should actually pedal pretty well uphill. Okay, so we've got the wide range cassette on, we've got the dropper post. This thing is now equipped to pedal uphill, although there are still some concessions. The first one is that this is a downhill bike, so there was no climb switch on the shock. I think that's still gonna hurt it uphill, even though it does pedal pretty well. A climb switch will definitely help that. The second would be the fork. It's a dual crown. Going to a single crown will save some weight and then also maybe help with that super slack head angle through some of the uphill switchbacks. So we're gonna take this thing out, give it a whirl, and maybe come back and revisit if we need to make some of those changes to figure out why people don't pedal 200 mil travel bikes uphill. There's just something about looking at a dual crown that makes it ride heavier uphill. And will somebody please get me a climb switch for this shock? Right, so we put on the wide range drivetrain, we've got the dropper post on, and we set off for round one of sort of this trial with this downhill enduro project. And you know what? It actually pedals pretty damn well. The C-tube angle is nice and steep like we thought. You definitely get the full range of gears, but I still think we could improve this by making it a touch lighter, improving the steering for uphill, and throwing a climb switch on the shock. So we're gonna make those changes now, go out for round two, and then give you our final ride impressions. First one's pretty quick and easy. We're gonna swap out the shock. For that, we have a King Creek Kitsuma air shock, has a climb switch, it's a four-way adjuster, very tunable, ready to go on this bike. Fork time. Axle to crown is roughly 610, 615 on this fork. The Marzocchi Super Z 190, 5 mil shorter. We can account with that for a 5 mil crown race adapter that's gonna bring it up. We'll try it without first and see what it's like, but the head angle might change. The other thing is that this is a 52 mil offset crown, so going to a shorter 44 offset, we're gonna lose 8 millimeters in wheelbase. So the bike is gonna handle a fair bit differently too, which could be a good thing for the uphills. So we'll just take all that into consideration when we go back out there. There we go. You know what? It feels like a bike. It feels pretty sick actually. I bet this bike has no problem getting up this mega steep hill. It's very loose, and actually I have the climb switch locked right now, so
question we were asking was, why aren't enduro racers riding downhill bikes or long travel bikes in enduro races? It's light, has the angles for climbing. So it's not going to be everybody's go-to for every brand. Again, this bike is a bit of an anomaly in that sense because the suspension kind of has this two-stage progression to it. It's quite light to begin with. The other thing is, when you do get a big 190mm fork or a 200, as we saw, the front end becomes quite tall. So you really have to over-exaggerate leaning into these flat, loose corners. Whereas on a downhill track, kind of sit back, relax, let the bike do the work, and the speed kind of carries you through. And these, yeah, you really gotta leverage the bike a lot, lean it very far.
Now, I don't claim to be the first person to morph a downhill bike into a long travel enduro bike, but there's definitely something about this one that is pretty special. We have the DW6 with the dual chain drive and the steep seat angle. It's a light frame, so all those things together make this thing work as a pedalable downhill bike. The climb switch obviously helps a bunch. We lightened up the front end, and that also tightened up the front center as well. So now it's much more manageable on those flatter, low speed corners. The front end was pushing before, now it's much more balanced. Yeah, honestly, I think there's something here. Like we've said before many times, travel doesn't weigh anything. The only downside that I see to having more travel on those lower speed trails is that you run into clearance issues just because you're pushing the bike through so much more travel. So you do end up hitting the cranks more. It is more effort as well. You have to push through that suspension to get to the rebounding platform or sort of ramp in the progression of the suspension to generate momentum. And that's where this kind of lags. But if you're really into pedaling to big features or pedaling to downhill tracks, then yeah, this thing is totally possible. And there are other bikes out there too that might even fit that bill. In the past, I've had some other long travel enduro bikes as sort of a test rig for other components that were in for review. I had that nuke-proof Giga as well as a Norco range. And there were certain attributes of those that worked in certain cases, and this thing kind of reflects on some of those, but in a way it does two things better. The suspension actually holds you up higher in the travel while you're climbing, so it doesn't bog down as much or strike the cranks as much as that Giga did. And then the drivetrain on this, yes, it's a high pivot, it has two chains, but I would argue that it actually pedals with less friction than that Norco range did. So yeah, definitely an impressive bike. There are other crazy ways to build downhill bikes. Who knew? You can even strap a water bottle to it. For the record, just because you can fit a dropper post and strap a water bottle to this frame doesn't mean that I'm advocating everybody go buy a downhill bike and turn it into a pedaling machine, but it has been a fun project. If you want to see more Pinkbike experiments like this, give us a shout out, a like and subscribe, and stay tuned to the channel for more videos.